You do and you learn. At the core of every learning is experiences, and that is what experiential learning is all about. No one player can change the education sector, and Hyderabad-based Worldview Learning is trying to do the same, trying to plug in wherever our mainstream education lacks. Correct. Welcome to YourStory.com. I am Sutrishna Ghosh, and today I'm joined with Mr. Sampreeth Reddy. He works with Worldview Learning.
That's right.
Please tell us about the concept. How did it begin? What is the idea all about?
Thank you, Sutrishna, for having me here.
Absolutely.
So how it all began, it's actually got to do with a lot of personal story. A bunch of us who started this, me and my friends, we were part of a global youth leadership development organization called ISEC. And through our college times, we spent very high quality time in this organization, which took us across the world. We got to understand different cultures, understand different global perspectives and challenges which are there in the world. And ISEC is all about immersing yourself in some of those challenges and developing a peer network to be able to build resources and infrastructure around yourself to do it. And once we finished it, once we got done with that experience, and it's only a student-run body, so once you're done with your student careers, you have to move out. And once we finished that particular experience, some of us got together and we felt that there's a high need in India, especially in India, but across the world as well, where we get these learnings, some of these immersive experiential learning programs to younger audiences, where they actually don't even need to wait till they're 16, 17, but maybe even at 14 or 12. So we thought, why not build a platform for very young people to immerse themselves in real world challenges, real world situations, rather than only look at what they're learning from an academic perspective. So that's where the experiential learning idea came forward. Like I was saying, that it is also an age-old idea, which is kind of reinventing itself in the current context.
Exactly.
In today's avatar, it's a whole lot of things, but for us, experiential learning is about first experiencing something yourself, and then through a deep introspection, reflection processes, you consolidate what you've learned from that experience. At the core, that is what we feel experiential learning is. So the experience has to come before the learning. So a lot of what is going on in the experiential learning field is where actually some sort of academic learning precedes experiences, and experiences are delivered to kind of make it relevant, make that learning relevant. So that's how we kind of started it, as to how we came together and thought, let's do something for the younger audiences.
So break it down for us. We understand that the concept of experiential learning is not exactly new, but how are you using it in your programs? What are your programs like? And what are the skills that you're trying to instill with this kind of?
Yes. So the main audience for us is what they're now being referred to as Gen Z, the Generation Z, everyone born after the year 2000. So we focus on these high schoolers because we feel that they're a very, very powerful, privileged group of people who have the might and the power to change a lot of things in the world for good. So that's the audience we are working with. The second thing is, how do we bring these experiences to life? Like, for them to learn, pick things up and make sense of them, of those learnings in their life. So the two pillars for us for building these programs are, like, one is obviously that they have to be experiential in nature. The second one is we engage them in very specific societal relevant problems. So it could be environment, which is a big problem, environment conservation, or it could be urbanization. Like, in a sustainable way, how do we take forward urbanization, because cities are irreversible now. Or it could be global citizenship. Everyone's actually coming together in this small global village. You need more number of young people who can actually live this diversity and leverage this diversity. So you need a lot of mobility to happen between cultures and between societies, for more number of these students who can empathize with two sides, leverage this diversity and make the best of it. So global citizenship is one piece. Then healthcare. I mean, we are all talking about health from a Medicare perspective. We can actually shift the narrative and talk about it from what you should do so that you do not need to go to Medicare. And that's where Gen Z comes in, because if you catch them young and instill some of these values or sensitize them to some of these challenges, they might not even have to solve some of the problems which might not even exist. So in a way, that's the real problem which we are solving, which is to not let some of the problems even come to the fore for this generation. So we really believe that this generation can be built to be a generation of solvers. And that's the main focus.
So your focus audience is Gen Z, and right now they are in schools or colleges or institutes.
Most of them are in schools.
Most of them are in schools. So how do you go about collaborating with this age group?
So
do schools have a play in it?
Absolutely. And we work only with schools. I mean, that's in terms of operationalizing this model, we only have worked with schools over the last 10 years. So schools for us are very important aggregators in this entire narrative. We feel that schools can be primary engines of societal change. I mean, they've always been looked at as nation builders, etc. But we think that there can be a further reimagination around it. Like, just to give you an example, the entire infrastructure of a school lies dead after 3:30 p.m.
True.
So the entire community which is converging at the school, if you take 4,000 kids converging at some of these large schools have that sort of strength. If they can utilize that entire infrastructure for a lot of community engagement. You could be reimagining them as urban farms. You could reimagine them as urban forests or solar plant. Energy provider producers, or it could be healthcare centers. We talk about how we do not have sports facilities. These schools have sports facilities. They could become massive centers of impact in the community.
So are you doing that? Are you turning these schools?
That's our vision, and how we are doing it is step by step. One Gen Z student at a point of time and then another one. And that's how we are doing it, because we feel that these students have tremendous influence in their families, in their schools, to do things even as they are learning. I mean, it's in the education perspective. We don't want to go into the charitable or philanthropic perspective. Like, you can't drive down this only as, it's a good thing to do. You should actually tie it up with their own incentive, their own opportunity, and that's what we are doing. We tell these, some of these privileged students that look at it as an opportunity. Don't look at it as charitable cause. Because service has almost become a CV element. You do something, some work with some NGOs, and then put it up on your CV because it holds you in good stead with your global education aspirations. That's not going to work anymore. You really need to get engaged, indulge in some of these opportunities, and look at them as opportunities in the first place. So they are like rural India, agrarian crisis is a large opportunity for this Gen Z. Only if they really get their hands dirty in this, it's a large opportunity. It's a large business opportunity if I have to further, take it further. So we are looking at them, looking at themselves as solvers first, and then the profession or the function they deal with. So you could be a lawyer, but you could be a water champion. You could be an advocate, a doctor, but you could be a kind of a fitness champion. So in many ways, we are asking them to reimagine the entire jobs landscape, the entire livelihood landscape from a solving point of view, so that we, solve some problems which we already have, and avoid some problems which will definitely come up.
And as we were discussing about why this particular generation and the importance they hold in the family structure now. So do you work with a lot of schools in the metros, and do you get a lot of such opportunities in tier 2, tier 3 cities as well?
Yes. So it's more to do with the demographic spread across all tiers. So you still have a lot of people in tier 2, tier 3 towns who have the affordability and aspiration, but they lack access sometimes because of being in tier 2, tier 3 towns. But there's no shortage of aspiration or wanting to do things differently.
And not even of affordability.
Not even of affordability for a lot of them, because the entire affordability curve in India is going only one way. I mean, more and more people are joining that segment which can afford more and more things. But access is still limited, if you were to look at it geographically. or markets wise. But it's there across the board. We've seen schools join us from tier 3 towns,
Right.
and they've done phenomenally well in
Right.
these programs, and they take forward very interesting projects. And it's there everywhere. You name it. It goes from Davangere to Erode to Agra and Kanpur.
So all sorts of places.
Yeah, we've had schools from across 80 different towns.
How many students have you worked with?
We've so far delivered to 35,000 students in the last 10 years.
And schools?
About 400 plus.
Okay, that's quite a number.
It's been
and
growing.
You see it growing.
Yes, we want to take it to 1,000 in the coming 3 years.
Right.
And that's the entire concept which we have, that which it's a strategic theme for us, that if we can engage the 1.5 million students who are part of these 1,000 schools across India, 1,000 top schools, then we would be essentially engaging 1.5 families, which are economically at the top of the pyramid in all these problems, which first of all they have created to a large extent, and they can also choose to solve some of them.
Right.
And that would be tremendous top-down effect if we can achieve that.
Right.
So that's how we're looking at these 1,000 schools as a big target across almost 300 towns in India.
Okay, 1.5 million students is quite a number to look forward to.
That's the hope.
Right. So when we are talking about your programs, could you break it down for us? Like, what does a typical Worldview program look like? What does it comprise?
So we have 4 large domains.
Okay.
So global citizenship, environment conservation, healthcare, and urban sustainability.
Right.
So I'll just take an example of an urban sustainability program. So this is called Future Sake.
Okay.
We've actually developed this program with a lot of agencies, including some of the government affiliates in Singapore, where we've kind of put together an intense study program where students get to go and understand the back end of a city which is at the forefront of urban sustainability at this point of time.
Right.
Just to give you a figure, Singapore had 95% dependency on Malaysia for water. And that treaty is going to die in 2041. So they have to, kind of figure out their own sources of water. It's a national security issue. Can you imagine? I mean, we are still debating connecting rivers, etc. But for them, it's a national security issue. If you take food, they import everything from abroad as such. So they are going vertical with food farming because they need to have their sources secure. So it's a very interesting 100-year plan that they have, where they're also looking at it being a city in a garden against some gardens in the city. So that's their strategic theme of how do they make a city in a garden. And they've achieved that at a practical level because 33% of Singapore at a land cover level is green now. For a small city which is landlocked, they've taken their armed forces underground and they've made whatever is on the ground green. So it's phenomenal. It's a good case study to study for students. It's not, the idea is not to emulate Singapore and come here and say, okay, we'll make Bombay or Singapore.
That won't work either.
That will not work. I mean, for politicians it might work where they say, you want to make Bombay, Shanghai, and London, Delhi, London. That's rhetoric. We need to make the best Bombay possible, the best Delhi possible for ourselves in our context, and that's where we only encourage them to see how Singapore, within its framework, within its resources, is doing the best it can.
That's your international program.
That's our international program.
Correct.
I'll also come to the one which we deliver in India. But so this is a typical 7-day program where they go through an academic course as well, where it's a problem-based learning course which is delivered by some of the best global universities. And then we deliver around it an entire program making Singapore itself the classroom. So they study the water story of Singapore by visiting these places where the water story is happening as such. So land use, the farming stories, the food story, the entire energy. I mean, for such a small country, how do you figure out energy? They're dependent on the world. But they've done it brilliantly by collaborating with a lot of countries nearby. They've made an extended market for themselves. And today, they're at the forefront of pushing, the frontiers of urban sustainability. So we take them through these different modules around, biodiversity, water, waste, etc. And then we bring them back and encourage them to make an audit of their own neighborhood, home, and school.
So that wise, it doesn't end.
It doesn't end with the program. It's
Correct.
not only the intervention of the program or the event of the program which is important. For us, the continuum is more important.
Right.
So we bring them back. We encourage them to take up projects in these influence zones. And if you look at it, if 1.5 million students ultimately, let's say over a period of time, who are privileged and have the resources with them, can build 1.5 million terrace gardens, 1.5 million rooftop solar plants, 1.5 million waste management units, 1.5 million rainwater harvesting units. You would not have groundwater issues in cities, you wouldn't have waste issues in cities, you wouldn't have even vegetable issues, which is a big issue in the city. So we feel that within the home itself, if we can mobilize these Gen Z students who we think are the conscience keepers of the family, they are now the chief technology officers. You were saying that they have had a lot of influence. I think for us, they are deciding 80% of what things families should do.
Correct.
Sometimes very proactively, sometimes even reactively. Parents are deferring judgment and decisions to these students because they are more aware, they are more connected to the world out there.
It's all on the tip of their fingers.
Absolutely. They're making choices for cars, they're making choices for brands in the supermarket, they're making choices for what sort of clothes they have to wear, which brands. If any brand is not conscious of sustainability now, it's doomed. Because these students are very, very particular that they associate. It's cool now to associate with something which is local, which is authentic, which is not necessarily global.
Also, I think because it's a fresh slate, it's easier to instill these ideas.
Absolutely. It's a fresh slate. And also, one of the very important factor for this Gen Z is that through their early years, they have actually seen the world go berserk. Be it the news revolution where every day they hear about bad things.
Exactly.
So they have kind of developed this feeling that the world is not a good place. It's not a great thing for us to be talking about, but the good part though, the silver lining is because they start off there, they have a high moral conscience to correct this. So that needs to be really tapped in, channelized, empowered by the previous generations to make sure that the wrongs which I think a lot of us have done wouldn't be repeated by them. And that's why we feel that they're very powerful, poised to make a big difference to the world.
So I understand why you're targeting the Gen Z. Why don't you tell us what kind of challenges you faced when you were trying to get these people to join a part of such a program?
So fundamentally, the biggest challenge still is the parent community still looks at certification courses and what can be showcased on paper as an experience.
Do you have a certificate?
We don't do it.
At the end of a...
We don't do it. We give a participation certificate which just acknowledges that you've done this program. But we don't measure and say, okay, you were 6 on 10 in this program. Honestly, I feel we're not in a position to do it. If someone can actually do this, where they can figure out all the 6 billion minds through some sort of psychometric tests, they should be called gods. I don't think
and for the same test.
Yeah, it's impossible. I'll give you an example. We have a program set in the outdoor, near a forest. We have our campus between Hyderabad and Bangalore.
Exactly,
So I'll also cover the program which I was talking about in India. So we've set this entire program in the outdoors, abutting a forest, and we have designed this program in such a way that all the experiences are connected to those outdoors. So we do farming, forestry programs, we do fitness from a health point of view, food is a big discussion there, but we also have rooted all this in the geographical terrain. And many times we forget that every market in the world is geographically connected. But our education is not geographically connected. That's where we are losing the entire, the monolith of what the education system has become is not letting the nuances of local come into the picture for students very early on in life.
How do you ensure that happens?
So what we do is we base it completely on geography. So it starts with the terrain. You have to understand the terrain, then you will understand why the soil is like that. Then you have to understand why the weather is like that. Then you have to understand why the trees are like that. And then you start understanding their impact on humanity. So the culture has come in Deccan Plateau the way it is because of what the geography is. You eat because of the geography. You breathe, your lung capacity is because of geography. Your entire biological system is because of the geography. So we start there and then connect it to all these global challenges of forestry, farming, global agrarian crisis is a big one. It's not just in India. I mean, it's easy to politically only color ourselves with that brush, but this is across the board. So we engage them in these programs. And it is done through very, very interesting, at least we think that they are, journeys where, it could be a simple trek.
Right.
Okay. Now the trek is called the biryani trek.
Okay. All right.
So the guidelines of the trek are actually the ingredients of biryani.
Okay.
But you will understand why each ingredient is important and how it has come about to be an ingredient in biryani.
Right.
So biryani is connected to the geography of Hyderabad or the larger Deccan Plateau.
Correct.
You get lamb, so it's available in abundance. It's all the shrubby forest.
Right.
So you start, the entire trek goes like that. So while it looks like a trek, there's a lot of learning which is getting accumulated. There's a lot of teamwork, but ultimately they come back and then start cooking the biryani.
Oh,
so they would never forget in their life what the ingredients of biryani are.
Right.
They cook, and then there is an entire discussion and a lowdown on how this was. A lot of warriors used it as fitness food, because you didn't need to eat multiple times in the day because of the way it digests, and the same with halim, etc. during Ramzan. So it's very interesting to look at food also from a geographical point of view.
So that's like history and geography rolled into
everything. It's all rolled into one. Actually, if you see, there is really no separation. We kind of separate them in textbooks and learn. If you take a simple cotton thread or a one simple clove or a cinnamon in Kerala, you can talk about the entire British history and the entire history of India in the modern context. So you can start that like that. These are the props we want to bring to students where they don't learn from a context of today you are learning a geography lesson and you are going to learn plateaus, but you learn from experiencing what happens on those plateaus, and then you start connecting with them. So now when we do this experience, you said what do they take back? Right? It's almost impossible for us to measure exactly what they take back. We've noticed some students go back and tell their parents that I do not want to do this course because I have realized I want to do something else. Now we've not done anything as part of that program to trigger that. But it's just what happens through powerful reflection. It's an emotional response. They figure themselves out more. They discover a lot about themselves. And that is where we feel that we contribute in a big way, the programs. So it's not a particular skill. Of course, there are some skills based on like farming skill, for example, would develop, but the idea is not to develop a farming skill. The idea is to give them a platform wide enough, broad enough for them to explore, discover. So at a pedagogical level, at the center is what we call play. Play is a wonderful thing. You see kids play. There are no rules. It's not a sport. Sport has rules. Play doesn't have rules. You take a little infant or a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, they are immersed in play. They have no rules. They look at a ball and they'll probably start doing things with it which are not meant to be done with a cricket ball, let's say. But you keep telling them, no, this is a cricket ball, use it this way. So we are the ones who are conditioning them, bringing them from play to sport. But play is a wonderful area for them to keep dipping back into, learn from play. And for us, that play is very, very important. So we bring them there and we don't tell them what to do. They are by themselves discovering things. It's a bit of a snakes and ladders. They do a few things, they climb a few ladders, they think, we've achieved it, and then they meet a snake and then come down, and then a lot of reflection happens. This happens in the outdoors, this happens while they're rappelling, this happens while they're ziplining. So we are not promoting adventure programs here. For us, the core is how much they take back about themselves. And then
so 10 years and you have achieved a lot, and I'm guessing there's more to go. If I have to put a timeline to it, 18 months, 2 years, what is the plan? Where do you see? So
we have 3 major areas where we are really concentrating on. One is we want to have 6 more campuses. Again, in different geographical areas. So we are envisioning, we've already started. And you have multiple offices in India as well? Yes, we have offices in Bombay and Bangalore. And we also have an office in Singapore. That's where we've anchored our regional expansion initiatives. But the center of our expansion will be the campuses. So it's called the Worldview Institute of Learning and Leadership, where we are looking at now having a campus around a river system, having a campus in a desert, having a campus in the high mountains, having a campus in core forests, and having a campus, for example, in this is near a crater, where a crater was formed because of the biodiversity which is there. So we are looking at all geographical elements and thinking how can we develop more campuses for immersions there. And there'll be very specific immersions which happen over there. But we are also on top of it. We want to see how we can layer a school called Caravan. That's in the making, where it takes students from one geography to the other, to the other, to the other.
So
and
it's
over the year,
school.
it's a mobile school.
Okay.
So everything is geography upwards, and you learn things differently. So from geography to market to culture to tradition, everything is completely rooted there.
Right.
So we are looking at that as a layer on top of what we already do with these campuses. So it's a more continuous thing we are looking at, not just as interventions, but on the other side, on the business interaction side and industry side, we also see a role for ourselves.
Okay.
So we are building something we are calling the Gen Z Solvers Coalition, which is to bring all organizations which have a big stake in this Gen Z, and whatever they would do ultimately moving forward. So we are getting them all engaged. So we have started this process in the last 6 months, and we found a lot of resonance with a lot of organizations across the world. So a lot of global organizations, global universities have been roped in. I'll keep it for another day to name them.
Absolutely.
But we are looking at a lot of organizations of repute. We've already worked with a lot of organizations of repute in universities like Harvard and Wharton School of Business, or in Singapore, a few of them. So we're bringing all of that energy, and we call it a coalition because there is no one stakeholder who has to play this role. It's not, we don't see only us having the role or the leading stake in dealing with Gen Z. It's an important societal need. So we are asking them to really look at this Gen Z not from the perspective of branding and marketing, but at a very, very fundamental level, shaping their future so that we shape our own futures in a better way. Right?
Well said.
That's another initiative which we are building.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Sampreeth, for
Thank you
talking
so
to
much.
us.